Natural Habitat Adventures is pleased to be bringing you this webinar today, Kenya's Great Migration, a Virtual Journey. And we're joined today by Joe Charleson, and before I turn it over to Joe, I'd like to tell you a little bit about him. Along with his wife Jillian, Joe manages Natural Habitat Safaris from Kenya, where he divides his time between Nairobi, the Leshwa camp, and the bush when he's out on safari. Joe was born in 1975 in northern England, and at the age of 10 moved with his parents to Kenya, where his lifetime of adventuring in Africa began. Joe received a degree in biological sciences from Bristol University in 1997. Since graduating, he's guided safaris and worked at some of the most prestigious camps in Africa, such as Jack's Camp in Botswana, Cotter's 1920 Camp in Maasai Mara, and the original Kerr and Downey safaris. In 2012 marked the next big step in the evolution of Joe's safari-based career path with the advent of his and Jillian's partnership with Natural Habitat Safaris. And we're delighted to have Joe with us. He's actually coming to us live from Kenya this evening, and I'm going to let him tell you where exactly he's located in Kenya and how he's communicating with us this evening, because I think it's pretty cool. So, Joe, welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for coming and joining us for this. I'm actually in the Maasai Mara at the moment. It's 10 o'clock at night here in Kenya, and I've been driving around on the plains looking for somewhere that I can get good enough signal to call in and be part of this webinar. And the Mara is a pretty remote area, and so I've just been driving up through herds of wildebeest, zebra, and other animals. And I'm out here on the plains, basically listening to animals in the background. So if you hear any murmuring or anything behind me, that's probably wildebeest. So welcome everybody. I'd like to get started on this. As the guys had mentioned, I've been a guide for about 20 years now. I'm working with Natural Habitat for about 8 years, and we're very, very proud to lead and operate their safaris here in Kenya. My love of the bush sort of started as a child for me. We, as a family, would go out exploring, and one of the places that we kept coming back to was the Maasai Mara. It's an important part of Kenya's wildlife protected areas, important part of Kenyan tourism, and a very important part for me as well. And we spend a lot of time down here, and we have a permanent camp that we've set up on one of the conservancies adjacent to Mara Reserve, and it really is our home out in the bush. As well as operating and leading safaris, guiding safaris, we're also very involved in conservation initiatives, and particularly in the protection of the Maasai Mara ecosystem. We're spearheading conservation efforts on the conservancy around the Leshwa camp, which is called the Savanna Conservancy. I'm also involved with the Maasai Mara Wildlife Conservancies Association, which is a lobby group and a forum for conservancies in the Mara. And as a company, Natural Habitat is supporting other great conservation and anti-poaching initiatives in the Mara and around the country. An example of that is actually at the David Shelbrick Wildlife Trust, where the photograph of me and my family was taken, where young elephants are being reintroduced into the bush down in Savo, in the southeast of the country. But today I'm here to talk to you about migration and the Maasai Mara. The two are so intertwined. The Mara itself is world famous. It's a household name. It evokes images of vast open plains and masses of animals. Recently declared natural wonder of the world. And it really is a beautiful wilderness area. It's regarded as being one of the finest game viewing areas in Africa, been romanticized in popular culture, and importantly for us as well, is the stage of the annual wildebeest migration. I've got a map that's drawn up here, and you can see the Maasai Mara in red on that map, located in the southwest of Kenya. Excuse me. It's on the border with Tanzania. The Maasai Mara is on the northern side of the border in Kenya, and then on the southern side is Tanzania's Serengeti. Collectively, these two form the Mara-Serengeti ecosystem, and they are one ecosystem. It's only a a line that's been drawn between the two as a border that separates them. And the area of the Mara Serengeti is about 15 to 17,000 square kilometers, mostly 5,000 or so feet above sea level, mosquito-free. And on the Kenyan side, the Greater Mara ecosystem is made up of the Maasai Mara Game Reserve at the core, with the conservancy surrounding it as buffer zones between the reserve and the community land outside. The Mara Game Reserve is about 1,500 square kilometers. The surrounding conservancy is almost double this, and there's a lot of open community land around this on which wildlife still roams freely. So the total area in Kenya of the Greater Mara ecosystem is pushing 5,000 or 6,000 square kilometers that animals can move over. Now, the Mara is really well known for having one of the highest densities and varieties of wildlife in Kenya. It's a place where one is able to see all major species of animals. Migration, as I mentioned before, is a big draw, but we'll talk about that a bit more later, because the Mara has fantastic wildlife all year round. As I mentioned earlier, it's a completely open ecosystem, so there's free movement in and out of the Maasai Mara Game Reserve at the core and the surrounding conservancies. There are no fences up to impede the movement of animals. And this is particularly important when you're talking about a mass migration of animals. They have to have that freedom to move. It's a place where there are opportunities for absolutely spectacular wildlife sightings. One of the few places where one can really get close to the action everywhere. The Mara is a place where you can get in to really experience the whole circle of life, from the young elephant that we saw earlier, all the way through to when animals meet their end. And all of the creatures that are involved in this are extremely important. The Mara is home to the big five. That's the lion, the leopard, the elephant, the buffalo, and the rhinoceros. And the rhinos are particularly important, as they're one of the most threatened species across Africa. And the Mara is actually home to one of the very few free-living rhinoceros populations that we have on the continent. Most other rhino are actually cooped up in very controlled wildlife areas. The Mara, being a completely open ecosystem, has about 25 adult rhinos, and there's more in the northern Serengeti as well in Tanzania. And these animals cross the border regularly. They're breeding freely. The numbers are being maintained at fairly stable levels. In Kenya, we have a special ranger unit that monitors these animals, and they coordinate well with their Tanzanian partners. The WWF here in Kenya is getting involved in Mara-wide ecosystem conservation initiatives, which will be helping these as well. As well as the flagship species like the rhino, the Mara is especially well known for its predators. There's certain individuals that are named and known around the world. The BBC's Big Cat Diary was all filmed in the Mara, as was Disney's African Cats. And there's a particularly well-known, there's one big male lion in there, who I think was called Carly, who we all here in the Mara know as Notch, because of the little gash in his nose. As well as those two, which were very well known, BBC's Planet Earth, Africa, and a whole load of other David Attenborough documentaries have been filmed in the Mara. And it's chosen because it is a fantastic place to see wildlife and experience wildlife. It's not just about the plains game and the predators. The Mara has got numerous waterways filled with hippos and crocodiles. The famous Mara and Tulloch rivers flow through the reserve, and the places that we'll visit on game drives through the area, and will, as you'll see later, become important in the migration. Maasai Mara has over 470 bird species recorded. This is one of the highest bird diversities anywhere in the continent. In Botswana, as a country, there are just over 400 species, so just to give you an indication. During the migration time, when vultures are following the vast herds around, you actually got the highest densities of raptors anywhere in Africa. The bird pictured here is the lilac-breasted roller. It's a very, very common bird, and one sees them perched on bushes all around. This one was just hawking for some insects, so swooping down, catching some flies, and then coming back up to rest on this little perch here. Mara also offers some very unique ways and different ways to view wildlife. Hot air balloons take off at dawn, drift for about an hour, and then give you a chance to land and have a lovely champagne breakfast under a tree. In some instances, game in the Mara is actually quite habituated, and animals get closer than we'd ever imagine, or want sometimes. There are one or two cheetah individuals that have learned to use vehicles as lookout posts. Not a behavior we encourage, but it's something that happens from time to time. Yeah, it does give one a very up-close and personal sighting. And most of the game viewing we do in the Mara is done from vehicles. There's a very well-developed network of tracks, and on the conservancies, off-road driving is also permitted. This does make a big difference, as in many national park areas in other countries, one has to stick to the roads, and sometimes a sighting that's maybe 40 or 50 meters away is very, very difficult to get to. In the Mara, because we have this good network of tracks, because off-road driving is allowed, it enables one to get into a very, very good position for these sightings. On the conservancies as well, walking is permitted, and it is amazing to be able to get out of the vehicle and experience the ecosystem from a different perspective. Driving around, one gets very close to animals. You get to see an awful lot, and you get to see a lot of behavior just very naturally, because the animals have learned to view the vehicle as just another part of the environment, and so they carry on doing whatever they're up to without being bothered by us. When you get out on foot, the animals do react to us differently. You also get to see some of the smaller things that you might miss out on otherwise. Tracks and signs, insects, all the very interesting stuff that guides and our trackers can tell you about. Being cooped up in a vehicle the whole time is difficult sometimes, so it is great to get out and see a little bit more of what's happening around. The Mara ecosystem is also home to the famous Maasai tribes people. Their nomadic way of life over the last few centuries has allowed wildlife to thrive on their land, whereas other communities who are farmers have lost all of their wildlife. The Maasai are still hanging on to many of their traditions, and are one of the most traditional tribes that we have in East Africa. Our safaris do have a focus on conservation, and community is an important part of this. And it's possible to meet with different individuals when you come out here, be they tribesmen, herdsmen who are out on the plains herding their livestock, as wild animals are nearby, or whether it's individuals who are involved in conservation initiatives and different projects around the reserve. There's also a little bit more on some of the other activities. Night game drives are a fantastic way of seeing other behavior. Although there's lots of action going on in the day, many animals, and particularly predators, are particularly active at night. And by following them and using a light to see what's happening, you can really pick up on some new behaviors and some interesting behaviors as well. There are also a number of nocturnal species that obviously can't be viewed until after dark. Getting a chance to see aardvark, porcupine, bush babies, and our own Kenyan kangaroo, the spring hare, is very, very different and puts a new twist on a safari as well. Sorry, excuse me. For the Maasai Mara, the migration is really the key draw. And I've pulled up a little map here. It just gives an indication of how the animals move around. And the migration's predominantly made up of wildebeest that are moving through the Mara Serengeti ecosystem. And they never stop, they're always on the move. In the early months of the year, January through March, they're in the southern Serengeti, which is where they calve, on the short grass plains just below the Ngorongoro highlands. In April, May, and June, they work their way up north through the Serengeti, and then in early July, they start to cross over into the Mara. They actually have come in a few weeks early this year, and there are already some vast herds that have been streaming across the Sand River to get at the grasses here in the Mara. And they stay with us here in Kenya in the Maasai Mara through till about September, October time, which is when they turn back and head back down into the Serengeti to get down to the short grass plains again by the end of the year. Now the migration is a truly magnificent event. As mentioned earlier, it covers an area of almost 20,000 square kilometers, and these herds are always on the move. It doesn't mean they're always moving in one direction, but there's just a general drift as they go along in response to localized rainstorms, vegetation levels. The reality is it's all about food. It's all about these animals getting more grazing. Within East Africa, we have two main rainy seasons, our long rains in April, May, and then our short rains in November into early December. And these are what get the grass growing. So now in the Mara, just as the herds are coming in, the grass in some areas can be 4 or 5 feet tall. And when the first herds thunder their way across the Sand River, all you can see is ears and horns poking out over the top. But by the time they've left us, they'll have grazed everything down to the nub. The migration is, as I said, predominantly wildebeest. There's about 1.5 million of them at the moment. But in addition to that, there are a few 100,000 zebras, plus some gazelle and other antelopes such as topi. And in addition to that, one also gets predators and scavengers, both animals and birds, following these large herds, because wherever the animals go, there's always a source of food as well. On our safaris and natural habitat, we get out there, we get in amongst the massive herds. As guides, we get our guests in the right place, in the midst of everything, away from the crowds. That's what we pride ourselves in, and that really gives us the most amazing experiences. Our vehicles are such that we can get into the areas that perhaps others can't get to, and then just being in amongst these enormous herds out there on the plains, listening to the wildebeest grunting all around, the smells of so many animals, it is quite amazing. And from our private migration base camp, our private mobile camp in the midst of the reserve, we're regularly hearing the wildebeest charging all around us, as well as the other animals calling throughout the night. One of the most spectacular moments within the migration is when the animals get close to the rivers. As I mentioned earlier, there are some fairly big river systems, the Mara and the Talek, that run through the reserve. And the animals will want to cross these to access grazing on the opposite banks. So as the herds get closer, they build up, the pressure builds up, and they're moving towards the bank, and then they come away again, they move towards, and eventually one brave individual takes the first leap, and then they all come streaming afterwards. And that's it. Once one starts going, the rest will just carry on behind, and one can sit there for an hour or more watching tens of thousands of animals just thundering across. These river crossings are dangerous, and they're one of the main causes of deaths of wildebeest and the other animals through the year. The Mara is home to some enormous Nile crocodiles. I've seen individuals that are almost 15 feet long. But in addition to them, there's also a very, very strong current when we've had rain, and a lot of animals will get swept down, and that will actually often result in more losses of wildebeest. In this image here, you've actually got a youngster that's leaping up above a snapping crocodile, and it's a particularly harrowing time for the little ones, having been born in the Serengeti down in late January, February, and by the time they get to us, they're then about 4 or 5 months old and having to make these sort of leaps of faith and swims across the river. So we're able to get up on the banks and sort of view all of this, and then as they come out the other side and thunder out onto the plains and spread out and start grazing again. The migration is spectacular from the air as well. I mentioned the balloon safaris earlier, and we do on all of our departures can organize balloon safaris for guests within the Maasai Mara Reserve. That's done from our migration base camp. The Mara is also a place of very beautiful scenery. So once we've spent time amongst the wildebeest, it is sometimes nice to unwind, take in some of the plains and rivers and the forests. And at the end of a long day, sundowners are a famous safari tradition. Enjoy cocktails as the day winds down. We obviously don't do that every night because sunset is also a fantastic time for wildlife activity. But every now and then it is enjoyable to experience being out in the bush and taking it all in. The beautiful colours and the soft light. that comes with that. Now, sorry, excuse me. We run three different safari itineraries within Kenya. Three different schedule itineraries: a migration, a Kenya migration, a photo safari, a migration photo safari, and then a best of Kenya that, in addition to taking in the Maasai Mara, also takes in some of the other parts of the country as well. I'll talk about all three of these in a over the next few slides. But just as talking about photographers, now many famous photographers have used the Mara as their canvas, and people like Jonathan Scott, Simon King, Michael Luther, Peter Beard, and Nick Grant. And they all come here because of the fantastic photographic opportunities that it affords. And this is something that we'd like to offer everybody who comes over. So even though we are running a Kenya migration safari and a photo safari, really getting everybody into a position where you can appreciate wildlife, enjoy what you're seeing, and get excellent photographic opportunities is all part of all of our trips. Now, our Kenya migration and photo safaris are centered around the Maasai Mara and the migration, and they fall between July and September, and they include 6 and 7 nights in the Mara each. The two main differences between those itineraries are one in regards to our expedition leader. On the photo safaris, our expedition leader is a photographer, and the trip activities are geared towards photographers being out in the bush as long as possible, often spending a little bit longer with particular sightings to be able to sort of get a photographic diary of what's been going on, and just to make the most of the photographic opportunities that are there. On our migration safaris, we have a maximum of 5 guests in each safari vehicle. This gives everybody a window seat, access to a roof hatch. But on the photographic trips, we actually only have 3 guests per vehicle. And this means that when we have photographers who potentially have a little bit more substantial equipment, they're not jostling for space within that time. Our expedition leaders on all of our trips are guides who are experts in the Maasai Mara and in Kenya as a country, and have had a very long relationship with the land, the people, and the wildlife. And the 2 main expedition leaders that we have this year are myself and another guy that I've worked with for many years called Andy Corbett. There are profiles on both of us on the Natural Habitat website. We're both professional guides, qualified in Kenya, photographers, and collectively we've got well over 30 years of experience within this ecosystem. And we are leading these safaris, but we're assisted by other Kenyan guides who are also extremely experienced and knowledgeable individuals. And they offer a slightly different perspective on what's going on as well, and different interpretations of what is happening. One of the hallmarks of Natural Habitat trips are small group sizes. And within our safaris here in Kenya, our Kenya migration has a maximum of 12 guests, that's in Kenya as well, and we only have 9 guests on our photo safaris. We appreciate the advantages of sort of an intimate surroundings and for the group to be able to bond well. And on all of our safaris, a part of our accommodation is our migration base camp, which is our own private mobile camp, and that we have exclusive use of for each of those groups. In addition to that, we also utilize different permanent tented camps that are located on the conservancies around the Mara. We do this so that we can combine some time on the conservancies that offer a wider range of activities beyond just game driving, and also so we get to see 2 sort of quite different parts of the ecosystem. Now, our migration base camp, which is pictured here, this is the mess tent, is exclusively owned and operated by Natural Habitat. It is a completely eco-friendly camp. It's absolutely mobile, just brought in to our private campsite just for our safaris, and then dismantled and packed away afterwards. There's absolutely nothing permanent about it, and we don't leave anything other than footprints in the sites we go to. And this really ties back to the sort of golden era of safaris, when sort of elegance and tradition was what it was all about. When you'd go on an expedition out into the bush and everything you needed took with you, and then you'd remove everything at the end. Now, despite this sort of very expeditionary approach, we're still able to keep things extremely comfortable. Here's a photograph inside one of our mobile tents in the migration base camp. Our staff look after all of your needs. We've got electric lighting in the tent. The bathrooms are a part of the tent with hot showers, an eco-friendly flushing toilet, and they're all completely insect-proof. And so have all of the creature comforts one would want. And then we have our communal dining area, our mess tent, where we'll all sit around one table of an evening. Chef looks after all of our needs, all dietary requirements are catered for. And it really is here in the mess tent at dinner at the end of a long day out in the bush, and also around the campfire, a fantastic way to make long-lasting friendships and based on some wonderful shared experiences. So that's just a little bit on what our safaris out in Kenya have to offer. Some of the sightings that we're likely to see, some of the activities one would do, a little glimpse of the style of accommodations that we like to stay in. And we really hope that we'll get to see some of you out here on safari at some stage soon. I'd also like to take this opportunity just to remind you that you are able to sign up for our emails and updates, and there should be a link for that on the screen at the moment. So that's the end of my little presentation for this evening, and I'm very happy to take any questions that you may have now.
Joe, thank you. That was just fantastic. Just such a wealth of information. And we have a few follow-up questions here for you. There was just a request for you to remind us again about the best time to go.
Okay, well, in Kenya, we base our safaris around when the migration is in. So our Kenya migration and Kenya photo safaris fall between July and the end of September. As that's when we know we're going to have the migration in, and that wildlife spectacle is the highlight of these trips. So that's also coincides with the summer holidays in the Northern Hemisphere. And so it is also a busy time of year, as one can imagine. The draw of the migration also draws in a lot of guests, but we sort of pride ourselves in being able to get away from the crowds as much as possible. That doesn't mean to say that the Mara is not a good place to visit at other times of the year. I'm here, so we're now in June. Earlier on in the year, we had masses going on around our camps and around our mobile. There's permanent predator populations within the Mara, and also permanent populations of all other major species as well, including some wildebeest that stay up in Kenya. So really any time of the year is good, but if one wants to sort of pick a time and say this is when the highest densities of wildebeest will be around and the most likely time to see river crossings and predator action and all sorts of other things, then you would probably aim for that July, August, September time, which is when we've scheduled our trip.
Great. Thank you, Joe. And a follow-up to that, you talked about the most likely time to see these amazing animals, and then some that are there year-round. And so there was a question here about whether any of the animals are ever guaranteed. Are you guaranteed to see the big five if you go during that particular time?
I don't think anybody can sort of guarantee any wildlife sightings in what is a truly sort of wild ecosystem. But I think in 20 years of guiding, I don't think I've ever had clients who've stayed in the Mara who've not gone away seeing lion, who've not gone away seeing elephant and buffalo. I think pretty much everybody also comes across cheetah as well at some stage. And, we're in the ecosystem for either 6 or 7 nights, or 7 or 8 days. And during that time, we really do have a very good chance of seeing everything. The two hardest species to see within the Mara are probably rhinoceros and leopard. As I mentioned earlier, there are about 25 adult rhino within the Mara. They're all black rhinoceros, which means that they're not like the gregarious white rhinoceros. They're browsers. They're a lot more secretive. One can see them sometimes in the early morning or the late afternoon as they come down onto the plains, maybe coming down towards water. But during the daytime, they're often tucked away in the thickets. But we do see them fairly often, and where our migration base camp is located, I know of 3 different individuals that we see regularly around that area. Likewise with leopards, I mean, they're a very secretive animal. There are a couple that are pretty well habituated, and I think in all of our trips over the last 3 years, I think every group has seen leopard. Some sightings have been, absolutely phenomenal. Animals draped over the limbs of trees, sometimes with a kill that they've had up there. Others have been more fleeting glances, but still very, very rewarding. But if one comes in the July, August, September period, one is guaranteed to see some amazing wildlife. You will see part of the migration and everything that goes with that. So all of the predators, the scavengers, the other plains game that's there, and just learning how all of those animals interact and how the whole mix works and how the ecosystem how they've adapted themselves to the ecosystem is all a fascinating part of being here.
Indeed, definitely. Okay, well, let me shift gears and ask you a couple of questions more about the logistics and sensible packing and so forth. So there's a question here about whether one would be able to recharge their batteries for cameras or other devices that they might bring.
Oh, absolutely. In all of the accommodations that we stay in, there are electrical power points. Some are provided by generators, some by solar with battery backup. So there is always an opportunity to recharge batteries. The plugs that we have here in Kenya are the English type, so the 3 square pins, but all the camps and lodges will have adapters that can be used. And most electronic equipment will accept between 100 and 240 volts. So people can check their equipment, but it's pretty much certain that it will be accepted. We may not have power all the time, and certainly in our migration base camp, which is a mobile camp, we don't do that. We have power at certain times during the morning, the evening, a little bit during the day for charging. And then our lighting around that is provided by rechargeable lanterns and kerosene lamps and candles that are around the camp. In addition to that, in our own safari vehicles, we have inverters and charging points. So even when you're out on a game drive, if a battery goes down, there's still an opportunity to charge. So yes, people will have ample opportunity. Okay,
good. Thank you. And then we have some folks, of course, who want to take their camera equipment and take the advantage of the beautiful scenery to get a lot of great photos. So there's a question about what sort of recommendations you would make for type of equipment to bring.
It's a good question, and I've had guests coming over the years who come with all manner of equipment. From people who have the most up-to-date digital SLR camera. On one of the last photo safaris I led of last season, there's a chap that came out with this absolutely amazing 600mm lens, which basically meant that when he was leaning out of the car, we looked a little bit like a tank with a big gun sticking out of there. It was so enormous. And he obviously got some amazing photographs with that. Having said that, I've also had guests who've taken some fantastic photographs on an iPad as well. Obviously not as close up, but you can get some amazing photographs that way. For anybody who's a keen photographer, not necessarily a serious one, I would recommend a digital SLR with a couple of interchangeable lenses. It's great if you can have a zoom lens that will go up as far as 300 or 400 millimeters. 400 would be ideal, but 300 also works well. And it's also great to be able to pull back to a wide angle, perhaps an 18 or 25mm lens, to be able to take in the landscape as well. On our photo trips, those are geared towards people who are interested in learning more about photography. They need not necessarily be particularly accomplished photographers to start with, but it's really to be able to put them in an environment where there's the opportunity to take photographs almost all the time. and with our expedition leaders and our other guides there to provide advice. It really gives everybody a chance to learn a lot more about how to use their camera and how to make a great photograph. And there's no sort of hard and fast rules about what does make a good photograph, and I think that's up to everybody's personal opinions, like artwork. But those are a good opportunity for people for guests to learn more about how to use their camera and what all those functions are all about. And yes, there can be a wide range of equipment that can be brought along for that.
Okay, thank you. So we just have a couple more questions here. There's a question about whether travelers should prepare for their trip by getting any particular shots or immunizations.
There are a couple of immunizations that may be required, and they can probably best be advised on by doctors or the Center for Disease Control. The recommendations on that do change from time to time. I know that for travel to Kenya, malaria prophylactics are recommended. However, in the Mara, because of the altitude we're at, we see very, very few mosquitoes. But a lot of guests will also be visiting other parts of the country as well. And again, a doctor or CDC can provide good advice on that. I know that our pre-departure briefing booklets have got a little bit more information on this. And so as guests book, they will then be able to that gives them context of where they can find out more information.
Okay. And then another concern would be, while guests are sleeping, particularly in the mobile camps, whether there is any concern or need to be concerned about, being close to the animals. I mean, is it safe to be out there sleeping in some of the mobile camps?
Absolutely. And in all of their camps that we're using, even the permanent camps, they're not fenced. So animals are able to move through them. The thing is that when we're in these areas, and when there's activity around camp, the animals generally keep away. They're, for the most part, not very keen on being very close to humans who are on foot. And when we're in a vehicle, it's a slightly different situation, as they don't view us as being humans, but rather us as being a single vehicle entity. But to go back to being in camp, when there's activity around and the staff are moving about the camp and guests are moving about the camp, it's absolutely safe to be within there. And then at all the camps that we use, our own mobile and other permanent camps included, there are what we call askaris, watchmen who are there, who are keeping an eye on which animals might be nearby and can help guests and alert them should there be anything around and about. And to be perfectly honest, one of the most exciting things about being on safari is having animals coming through and lying in your tent at night where you are absolutely safe and listening to hippos laughing away in the river, or wildebeest murmuring just out on the plains, or a lion that's walking right past the edge of camp roaring away, elephants breaking branches nearby. That's part of the magic of being out on safari. So yes, I mean, I would say to guests, come and really enjoy that, drink it all in the knowledge that you are safe at the same time.
Okay, great. Thank you. I realize we have one more question. This was the first one that came in. We talked about this before we got started, and I neglected to bring it up when we were talking about animals, but we'll make this our last question. What percentage of the wildebeest we talked about the wildebeest and zebra surviving the migration, and what percentage of the newborn actually make it to adulthood?
Well, the wildebeest have developed a strategy that enables as many of their newborn as possible to survive. I mean, basically, they all drop their calves within a 2-week period in February in the southern Serengeti. And so that means during this calving period, there are hundreds of thousands of youngsters that drop down on the plains, and within 5 minutes of walking, within 10 minutes of running alongside next to their mother. It also means that it's an event that does attract a lot of predators in, and it is fair to say that a large number are lost very early on, and there are lion, cheetah, leopard, hyena, even jackals nipping in there and trying to get at these youngsters. But the majority of them are surviving through that, and then they have this continuous trek throughout the year where they're moving through areas that they're not familiar with. They're always on the move. Every area they go to is a new one. They encounter barriers such as rivers that they have to get across. But despite all of this, the numbers within the migration are doing well. I mean, they are staying, I think, pretty much constant, maybe even growing ever so slightly. And the market at the moment, the estimation we have now is about 1.5 million wildebeest that are in this migration, which makes it one of the largest movement of land mammals anywhere on the earth. But in terms of trying to put a figure on the numbers, we've often said that during the course of the year, one must lose a couple of 100,000 wildebeest every year if the numbers in that entire population as a whole are staying constant. And that's a mixture of newborns who don't make it, ones that get sort of eaten along the way by predators, and there are even some lucky wildebeest that make it to a ripe old age and die of old age. So I hope that answers the question.
I think it does. Thank you so much. Well, this has just been such a wonderful presentation and time well spent. And Joe, I know that it's getting late for you, and we're almost out of time for our presentation. So let me go ahead and turn it back over to you for any closing comments you might like to make.
Okay, thanks very much. Just that, here we are now in the middle of June. We're getting ready for our migration season now. The wildebeest have come in. It is a fantastic time to be here in the Maasai Mara. The area is looking absolutely beautiful. We've just had recent rainstorms which have breathed a breath of sort of fresh air back into the plains. And we're anticipating a fantastic migration season ahead. We've got some great groups coming through. And we hope that they're all going to enjoy being here as much as we all do. Those of us who live here enjoy it. And just urge our listeners that coming over to East Africa, to Kenya, it really is coming to wild Africa. The great big open plains of the Mara Serengeti ecosystem are absolutely amazing. There is this immense feeling of freedom out here, of being out in the bush, which I think everybody should experience at some stage. So I look forward to seeing many of you as our guests out here on safari at some stage soon.
We would like to wish you all a good day, and of course invite you to come back again in a couple of weeks as we talk about our next topic, and we'll be sending you information on that soon. So with that, we'll say good day and conclude our webinar. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, Joe.
Okay, thanks so much. Good night.
Okay. Good night.